Hello and welcome back. This is Chris from Swatera Media. In today's tutorial, we're going to be looking at a couple different tools and methods that can help us make our own homemade title animations. Here's what we'll be making today. In the video coming up after this, we'll be looking at creating custom transitions. After that one, I'm tentatively planning to do one that will cover a decently complex logo animation. If you'd like to check those out as well, consider subscribing if you find this video useful to you. We also have a Patreon where you can find project files and even access one-on-one support. Anyway, on to the titles. Alrighty, so let's begin rather simply. What we're going to do is start out with the downtown one. So here I have it. Basically just brought in a couple of nodes ahead of time. So I'll briefly explain what's going on here. So the first thing that we have, and this is something I'll go into a little bit of detail, is this is an SVG file that I have imported from Adobe Illustrator. If you're not familiar with how to create SVG files and import them into Fusion, I think I'll show that to you now. It's a very simple process. So we'll go ahead and open up Illustrator. Alrighty. So I've popped open Illustrator, created a file that is 3840 by 2160, and then I can just add some text. And the first word that popped into my mind was tentative. I'm just going to scale that up. Let's give it a nice, cool typeface. Not Tahoma. Let's see. What do we have here? We'll do Mrs. Eves. Mod OT. So, as of right now, and I'll just center that. I'm gonna bring these in. We're gonna line it to the middle there. As of right now, this word is not in a format that Fusion would understand. So at the moment, it is text, it's editable text, and we need to change that. So basically all you do is once you have your text, and if you're not sure, one thing you can do is actually hold Alt or Option on your keyboard and drag and grab a copy. So that way you have a copy that is still, the text is still directly editable. What we can do is right click, say create outlines. So if I hit Control Y to go into our outline view, we now see that we have points making up our objects that are directly able to manipulate them. Not so much the case with our text down here. This is the format that it needs to be in order to bring in objects from Illustrator. Control Y, again, come out of that. And then all we need to do is go File, Export, Export As, and then an SVG. We want to choose SVG from the drop-down, name our file, and export. I usually just leave all this as is. And then when we come back into Fusion, we'll not that. We'll go up to File, Import, SVG. And then we'll navigate to our file. Fusion, titles, assets, downtown, untitled one. I always leave this as is. And now we have this here. Now, what I didn't do is I should have told it to only to restrict it to the artboard, but I didn't do that. So we also have our tentative down here. As we can see, it tried, but it didn't come over properly. And yet our tentative up here did. Now these are broken down, and I'm going to get rid of that because that's kind of wild. These are broken down in kind of an odd way. So when you bring in an SVG, we have all these like paths, which just represent different parts of the letters. So these are acting as masks for background nodes. So the background nodes are what determine the color of the text. And I don't know why, but it Fusion seems to like to default to this really nasty brown. Don't ask me why, I have no idea. What I have done here for this one is I have used a color corrector, and I've upped the gain, the gamma. Well, we don't want to do that unless we choose predivide post multiply. Then we can change the brightness in here. If you wanted to change the color, you could probably do that as well, just by starting here. And then we can pick a color that way. Because the only other option would be to go into each of these background nodes here and change each one, which is crazy. So I think using the color corrector is probably the best way to do it, in my opinion. So that's what's going on at this stage of the node tree. Let's collapse this. So we have our color corrector turning it white, and then we have a transform changing its position. And then to get it to be set as the same size as our frame format, which in this case would be 4K, just 16 by 9. Yeah. So this background node, we're merging that text over it. So now we have it the same size as everything else. And then what we're doing is we're merging that over top of our city footage here. Very simple. Couldn't be easier. Now, what we want to do is reveal this text by using a video. So I have this video here that I think I downloaded from Pexels, if I recall correctly. So we like this video because it has a black background. The foreground isn't white, but we can work with that. That's no problem. Now this, I should say, this is emulating using track mats and luma mats inside of After Effects. So this is essentially what this exercise is doing here. So we're going to use the alpha of this smoke to drive the mask of our text. Now the thing is, if we switch this to alpha, we do not have an alpha channel baked into this footage, which is okay. So what we want to do is we're going to grab a channel Booleans node. And typically when you work with alphas, if you're kind of creating an alpha from whole cloth, what you want to do is use the red channel. So what we're going to do is our operation is going to be copy. And for the alpha, we're going to copy the red foreground. Oh, there it is. So now you see we've created an alpha. And if I switch that to alpha, we have it here. And you know, we could from here use our tools to kind of push this white all the way to white. All these, you know, shades of gray, kind of get rid of that and just use the outline. But I kind of like the variation of the alpha channel in here. So we'll kind of I think we'll keep it. So what we'll do is we'll just start by plugging this channel Booleans into the mask input on the merge node. We'll take a look at it. Oh, we're still in our alpha channel, so we'll switch back to color. So now we see, just like that, it's revealing parts of our letters. Now the only problem is it's not really doing it super quick, or it's not covering the whole thing. And that's just because it doesn't cover the whole thing in here. So what we'll just need to do is I'll grab a transform and we'll drop it down here. And now what we'll do is I think what I'll do is start by just scaling it up, moving it over, since we know it's kind of like in the center here. So now it's kind of in the middle like that. And let's pull that up here and we'll make it a little bit bigger still. And we'll move it over. Let's see how it. Now what we'll do as well is kind of help it along. Let's play it back and see how we're looking. It is taking a little bit for it to get in, so we might want to consider speeding it up a little. I mean, maybe not. I feel like it comes in like one beat too late. I feel like it should come in now. It should start. So I think we'll speed it up a little. So for that, oops, we'll just grab a time speed. And we'll start slow, maybe like 1.2. And I usually like to up the sample spread a bit, make it all blend nicely. Now let's see where it comes in. Now, one of the things that we'll notice if we look at this video, it kind of undulates and kind of moves in unexpected ways. So what we want to do is kind of help things along. Because what we want is we like this, and then perhaps around here, what we can do is have it just kind of fill in the rest of the way. So what we can do, if we look at this, we could probably use a merge and grab let's go get our alpha channel. So white is revealing. So what we want to do is cover that whole thing with white. So we should be able to just grab a background, change it to white, merge that over top. And now if we look here and we switch out of alpha, it's filled in the whole way. And if we turn this alpha down on this background node, we see the edges kind of erode. So what we'll do is we'll find the point where we want it to fill in the whole way and stay solid. So let's take a look here. We'll just play back. It's probably about here. So we'll give it a little bit of space. We'll have this transition happen over a decent amount of time, maybe a couple frames, a couple seconds. And then we'll set this here all the way to 1. So now it's in the whole way. And another thing that we can do, oops, wrong one, is we probably want some sort of shadow on this. So I'm going to add a quick little drop shadow. And let's take a look at this. We'll increase the softness and make it Oops, make it less noticeable. Just a tad. And just for fun and skittles, let's just add a little bit more visual interest to the background. Let's grab a color corrector and maybe just bring down the lift. Oops. Oh, wrong way. Wrong one. There we go. We'll bring down the lift. And again, we'll bring it up just a touch. Cool. So that is our downtown shot. So this method allows you to use pretty much any alpha footage. Like on a lot of stock video sites, if you look for if you search alpha transition, they just have tons and tons of black and white videos that allow you to use them as masks. So this is a great way to do it, and it's super simple. So of course, to just reiterate, the most kind of probably the part that's new for most people would be using that channel Boolean. And what we do is just copy the red channel of this, which actually looks like this. So we're copying that red channel and we're using that as the telling Fusion how to cut out the alpha channel. Now you can use the other channels, but typically in VFX we use the red channel. But you know, if you look through these and you notice that, you know, one channel is kind of seems to be doing it better than the others, by all means use whichever channel works best. Experimentation is key. So that is our downtown shot. And now we'll move on to the next one. So for our next trick, what we're going to do is look at how to recreate the stroke right-on effect that is really popular. And one of the first things that you learn when you're learning After Effects is the ability to have text, especially script text, look as though it's being written on the screen. So to kind of explain this node tree here, this is kind of our starting point. We have our forest footage. Now it was in 4096 by 2160. I just wanted to keep all these 3840 by 2160, so we're merging that over top of a background node. So that way this ends up being 3840 by 2160. Over top of that, we have our Hello Fall text that I created in Illustrator. And this, I should mention that you can replace this with just your regular old text file here. You don't need to use Illustrator for this. It's totally optional. I used Illustrator because I wanted to add this extra little embellishment here, this little extra line that will have hopefully animate in. And we might need to separate this part out. And I think I might do that now, actually. So we'll get a chance to see how to actually break things apart. Something needs to be done about this SVG. This method of importing SVGs, because it's a little unwieldy. Oh, hey, first try. So that's the line. See, the problem is I am so scared of just completely breaking this. Let me see how. So our line is made up of a background node and two paths. Okay. This merge is going out, and this is the actual background of it. So what we can do is disconnect this and we'll just grab these and move. Okay, so what we're going to do is because if anybody knows how to move things out of a group without ungrouping, I'm hitting Control, I'm hitting Alt. Doesn't seem to be doing anything. So what I need to do is ungroup my group here, and then drag out my line. So I probably should have just made two separate SVG files, one for the text and one for the line, but I didn't do that. So here we are. There we go. So now we have that and this, which I'm going to get rid of that merge because it's just confusing. There's that. And now what we'll want to do is keep all the transforms the same. So we want this new separate path to be upstream of the transform node. So we're going to drop down a merge. I'm going to merge that over top. So now when we go back to our thing, everything should look exactly the same. Beautiful. Now before we start the animating, I had a thought, and one thing that I think would be really cool is if we kind of attached our text to the background so that we, as the drone moves down, our text kind of moves with it. So what we'll do is very simple. Let's move this over. We'll come in and we'll drop down a planar tracker. I typically use Mocha, not a sponsor, but this planar tracker should work just fine. Now, I have a previous tutorial, maybe I'll put a link up there, or maybe I won't. That kind of goes into the planar tracker a little bit more, but I'll kind of talk through what I'm about to do. So I'm going to go, so we're at frame 300. I'm going to set that as a reference frame. And then we'll draw ourselves a nice, healthy box. And we'll track backwards. Now it should latch on. There was some change. I think there was a cloud going overhead, so sometimes changes in luminance can affect a planar tracker's ability to kind of latch on. So we'll kind of see how that goes. Now things might look a little different because I actually experienced a crash while I was running the planar tracker, probably because I was also encoding media in DaVinci Resolve at the same time that I'm doing this, which, don't be like me, please. Okay? Don't do that. Also, save your work very often. So now we've got our planar track here. We'll just kind of scrub through. Yeah, you see that the shadow moving through, how it's pushing those points out. Yeah, that's okay. It looks like it held on very well. So we'll go to our reference time, create a planar transform. And you know, stuff like this isn't strictly necessary, but if you want to impress people, going the extra mile and like doing stuff like this really, really helps. It really does. People are impressed, even though we know it's not that hard. So let's see how it's looking. So now we have the planar transform right before we merge hello fall on top of the footage. Let's see how it's going. Heck yeah. So that'll look really cool. Let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. So it'll kind of look like our hello fall is fixed to the top of the trees. And if you really, for extra credit, you could also kind of track the path of this luminance difference. Use a mask to affect the luminance of the hello fall here. I'm not going to do that because, well, all right, I did it. So it's literally just you can see we used a polygon tool, and we're just following the brightest part of that across. And I have it plugged into XGlow, or Exponential Glow, which is a really lovely glow tool that's part of Reactor. And in the last video, I'll link it. Hopefully, I'll remember to link it. But it's in my maps video. It talks about how to install Reactor plugins. And I might actually make a video just talking about installing Reactor plugins, or find somebody's, so that way, in each of these videos, I'm not, explaining that process over and over and over again, because you probably don't want to hear it. So yeah, that's adding, a little bit of interest to it. Now the problem is, we'll see. It might not even be visible depending on how we time our write on, but we'll probably start it from the beginning just so that we can see our cool glow here. So now for the actual write on. So what we're going to do, in my case, since I have two, I'm going to kind of organize this a little bit better. What we're doing essentially is merging the paint stroke that we're about to make over top of these letters, and then revealing them over time. So first what we're going to do is grab a background node. I'm going to start with my hello fall. And we're going to set the alpha of this to 0. Then we're going to grab a paint node. We're going to plug this background into the input of the paint node. And we're going to get a merge node. And we're going to merge that paint node over top of that. So we have our background node, paint node, our text, and then our merge here. Now our merge operation, we're going to set their operator to in. So as we can see, it just disappeared. That's what we want, but actually not right now. So we're going to switch that back to over for now. So next what we want to do is grab our paint tool. We're going to grab our polyline stroke. That'll give us a Bezier curve. And we'll probably want to make this, a different color so we can see it a little easier. I'll go with pink. That'll work. And now we're going to trace these letters. That's making me think. I wonder if there's a way to use Illustrator to make this a little bit faster. I'll look into that. But for now, we're going to trace it by hand. So we're going to start. Now, okay, I see what's happening. So I love to leave this stuff in when things don't quite go the way we'd like. So things are getting cut off here because our merge that takes our text and makes it the same size as our frame format is down here. So it hasn't happened yet. So we actually need this to be back a ways. So we're going to need this to be here. So we're going to take this and we're going to plug that into here. Oh, and for a while when I first started learning node-based compositing, I never knew how to make these little thingies here. I'm holding Alt and then dragging. So what we're going to do is actually grab this transform. We're going to put it after each of these. Oops. There we go. So this is making our node tree a little bit crazier. It's late at night, so there's probably a bit more efficient way to do this. So we're also going to copy our background. Background. There we go. Now things should be the same as before. Yes. And like I kind of mentioned, it's important to always put in the, never leave out the issues that come up. All right, let's go back here, go to our paint node. And again, make sure we have our polyline stroke. Now we'll start tracing. Now these are Bezier curves. If you're not familiar with Bezier curves, one of the best resources to look that up and learn more about those are like beginner Adobe Illustrator course tutorials. That's where I learned to work with Bezier curves. Now, if you wanted to level this up and kind of be an overachiever, what you'd want to do for a lot of these is actually have separate draw-ons for each of these letters. So you'd want to have separate paint nodes for each of these, which gets a little bit cumbersome. But sometimes what you run into is parts overlapping in weird ways. Like here, this stroke is going to be shown. You're going to see these, this side and this side, when you shouldn't, until this comes around and fills everything in. And that's one way to avoid it, is to have multiple lines, because then you can have different weights to the lines. We'll see if this actually gets included. It's a little rambly. So what I'm doing here is using my best knowledge of how we write cursive. I don't remember all of it, but we want to kind of follow what your hand would do naturally. So we're gonna hop down here and then up. I'm gonna have to do something crazy. We're gonna go all the way back here, and then fly across. All right, so now that we have everything traced and ready to go, now all we need to do is just have it animate in. So we'll start, I'm gonna just start at the beginning. We'll bring that right on all the way back. Keyframe. And let's say, let's start with 2 seconds. And what we'll want to do to make it a little bit more natural is we'll close this keyframes tab. We'll open up spline. We have our paint 1. Start and end. We're going to make this smooth. We're going to make this smooth. For now, I'm going to disable. We're going to hit Control P on Xglow, because that is a very heavy add-on. Let's get that cached so we can see. Now, I always forget where the where to set the motion blur for this one. Let's grab a part like right here. I want this to have a bit of motion blur to it. Yeah, there we go. That should do it. And we'll do the same for this. Motion blur, quality, whatever your GPU can handle. And I like to just make it a little bit fuzzier. All right, let's see how this looks. And now it'll take just a second longer. All right, let's see. It's kind of nice. And now we just need to do the same for our little stroke down here. I'll probably have that start about here. So come into our paint node, controls, stroke controls, set another keyframe here, and we'll bring it all the way back. Whoops. Wrong one. Stroke controls, bring this back. Set our keyframe. And maybe we'll have it complete with the oh, we can see where that keyframe is. Maybe about there, a little bit before. This is where experimentation comes in. I'll write that on. And same as the other one, I'm going to, let's see, we'll turn off the paint one, grab paint 2. I just want to smooth out these keyframes. Oops. Make it a little nicer. And now let's cache it. And one thing you can also do is turn off high quality and turn off motion blur so you can get caches that happen a little bit faster. But I'm going to turn that on anyway because I clearly want to punish myself. All right. Now I think we're looking pretty darn good. I think that's a good place to end this one. Obviously, this write-on effect doesn't have to just be for text. You can use that to reveal all sorts of things if you don't feel like using like your traditional masks and things like that. Anywho, on to our next title. Okay, now for our last title, the main crux of it is when I used After Effects, well, I still use After Effects. I just don't use it as much as I used to. One of the coolest plugins that you could get for After Effects was the Trap Code suite from Red Giant. And one of them in particular was sound keys, which allowed you to basically analyze sound and use the beat or something happening in the high end, like a snare, to drive keyframes. So basically anything that is keyframeable is something that Sound Keys was able to affect. Now, the only trouble with Sound Keys was, I think the Trapcode Suite, at least the last time I had purchased it, it was $500. I think that was a student discount, so I think it was actually $1,000 for regular people. But as part of Reactor, there's a plugin called Suck Less Audio that allows you to do pretty much the exact same thing. The only thing I kind of liked about Sound Keys, it had more of a visual interface that showed you the waveform and allowed you to select particular ranges of the waveform in more of like a visual way, but Suckless Audio does pretty much the exact same thing, just without the visual element. So we're going to do something here. I haven't quite decided what yet, but we have this text. I think we'll have it animate in. So we'll kind of look at using masks to animate text in. And then we'll have something reacting to the music. We'll see. We'll see. Not sure what yet. So to go over what we have here, so of course we just first have our text that I've imported from Illustrator. I have a corrector kind of changing the color, transforming, we're merging that over our background to get it the same size as the rest of our comp, and then we're merging that over top of our footage. Now what I think might be cool is if we have a line that goes kind of right in between these two. So maybe we have fly come up, Leica come down, and then G6 come down. We'll kind of experiment and see how that goes. So to do that, ideally, what we'd want is fly, and then Leica, and then G6, all on separate objects. All right, so now we've got our text all separate. I went into Illustrator and just exported separate files for each of these guys. Because what's important here is that we can mask all of these separately. It's in here in this merge node. I can affect the blend here. We can also mask it that way. So what we'll start by doing is creating masks for each of these individual pieces of text here. So we'll start with fly. And I won't connect it yet because we don't want it to disappear on us. So I'm going to come in probably about right in the middle here. And we'll create a mask. I always like to go to the edges because, you know, depending on how far up you move it, it will determine how fast it looks coming in. So I also always like to make sure that we don't accidentally run out of room. I also want to make sure that this is, nice and soft. Give that a nice soft edge. Just a bit. All right, now we'll plug this in. And what we'll do is actually take advantage of our second viewer and keep this up. The only problem we're running into, I think we have this a little too soft. I did do a little bit of a whoopsie there. Make sure that that's in the right spot. So now if I move this, comes in, we can put that soft edge back. And then we'll move on and create the next mask. So we kind of, I was said before, we kind of maybe want to have the Leica come down from top to bottom. So we'll go ahead and make a mask for that. Now in this case, I don't think we need to move around any weird shaped text. So we'll go ahead and just make it a normal rectangle. And to give that a bit of a soft edge. And we'll do the same for G6, in which case we'll probably use a polygon. And we'll have that come from top to bottom as well. So now we have all our parts in place. So what we'll want to do, it's always good to work backwards. So we'll pick the time when we want our animation to have completed. So maybe like 2 seconds. Let's say about frame 50. And then what we'll do is set our keyframes. So we'll kind of animate backwards. We want to set our center keyframes for our transform nodes. So that way we're keyframing where we want things to end up in the end. Then we'll go back a little ways, and then we'll start moving things around. So we have fly. So fly is first, and we'll adjust the timing of these keyframes after the fact. And then we have this, we'll move here. For G6, we'll, oops, move that upward. So things look a little wild right now. It's because we just need to adjust our timing here. So it's fine. We have, let's see, transform 1, 1, 1, and let's rename these. So this is fly. So that way they're a little bit easier to find. So we want fly to come in first. And G6 comes in last. Now I'm thinking it's probably a little too slow. Yeah, definitely. We probably want to cut all of these in roughly half. So a lot of this part of things is just kind of messing with the timing and stuff until you've got something like this is like super basic, and you can definitely make animations like this that look a lot better. And we also, of course, want to come into our spline editor. Let's come to smooth that, those boys out too. And of course, fly as well. We want to smooth these out. So now you get animations that are a little bit more interesting. That spline editor is like a real savior. All right, so the real crux of this was figuring out a way to integrate audio into things. So what I'm thinking is the go-to for me, it's always circles. Circles are a great way to do it. One thing that we could do is use the duplicate node on an ellipse. So what we could probably do is have that ellipse grow over time. So let's create an ellipse. We'll start over here to the right of all the stuff that we already have. Grab this, grab a background. Now we have that. And what we can do then is grab a second ellipse. And we want to make kind of a donut. So I'm going to make one ellipse smaller than the other. 0.4, 0.4. Like 0.48 and 0.48. There we go. Now this is going to invert and minimum. Well, there we go. So we have one ellipse set to invert, and then this one not inverted, and then the paint mode set to minimum. And now we can make this whatever color we'd like. Probably a soft blue to contrast with the, or to complement the, what we already have in here. what we'll do is kind of preview this, drop down and merge here. Merge this over top. Probably not blue. Do I still have that color? Yeah. We're not going to go too crazy design-wise for this. So now what we want to do, we're going to drop down a duplicate node. And let's go ahead and we'll make this, bring this in to kind of get a preview. So we'll kind of, what we'll do, I think we're going to split up the base frequencies and the higher frequencies. So we're going to have the base frequencies make this duplicate outward. Let's up our number of copies. It's going to affect the number of copies. So that way we end up with something like this. So we'll make those about there. I also like to give it a little bit of blur so that there's a bit of fall off with those. So we have our number of copies here. We're going to set this back down to wherever the default is. And now what we're going to do is load in our sound. So first I'm going to come in here and choose. Now I have music from Epidemic Sound that will be in the project file, but it can only be used for personal learning reasons. It can't be used for like commercial projects or anything. There we go. That could probably be heard through my microphone. But you also probably heard it in the intro. And you saw the finished version already. I'm not crazy about these colors anymore, but we're going to just kind of roll with it. I might use a... Let's actually... We're going to change these colors real quick. Alright, so I changed it to a nice soft blue. Like I said, the graphic design element is not important. It's all about the how we get things to react and move the way we want. And I might actually make this a little smaller. So I'm going to change this width and height to 0.49. So there we have nice thin lines. So now that we've got things kind of where we want them to be, we'll work on animating this duplicate using sound. So for anything, like I said, anything that's keyframeable, what we do is find the thing that we want to animate, right click. Now what we can also do, because at some points it disappears, we can duplicate this whole deal. And on this first one, delete the duplicate node, merge this over top. So that way we always have a circle. Oh, I'm a big dummy. What you actually want to animate, not the number of copies. Let's remove that. We'll choose the number of copies that we want. We actually want to go after the size. Hey, we all make mistakes, don't we? Modify with audio wave. Come in here, browse for our file. Now, I really don't want it to be doing that. And we'll actually want to, eventually we'll move these and put those first. So that way these titles are over top of what we're doing here. But we'll do that in a minute. Now, I actually don't want it to be going inward. So that's where that amplitude offset comes in. All right, now one thing that I'm doing here is I'm taking this one ellipse, I'm using that as a mask. So that way when it goes inward, you can't see it. Now what I'm thinking is we'll have one going inward, but it'll be the higher frequencies. So I'm just going to copy this whole branch here. I'm going to paste it again. And we'll grab this, and it's going to have the same audio waveform, except now we're going to check the 3 to 20 kilohertz range, and we're going to uninvert this so that way it should show up on the inside. Yeah, and then we're going to just going to lower the amplitude scale a bit. Let's check this out. And what we'll probably also want to do for this one in particular, I believe there's a setting for blend. We'll probably want to blur it even further. So as I had mentioned before, we want to swap these guys around. I'm going to disconnect this whole thing. I'm going to move our text over, and we're going to move this in, and I'm going to actually add another merge node. So now we have our cool circles merged over top of our footage. And now if we come over here, it's not going to make a huge difference, but now our text is over top. Now, one thing you can do as well is you can add motion blur to your merges for the text. Now, other things you could do, you could also kind of correct the footage so that way you can your text is a little bit more legible. And you could also kind of reverse your animation too. There we go. Beautiful. And that is it for learning how to make things react to audio. I would highly recommend just experimenting the crap out of this one, because you can do amazing things when you can make things react to sound. It really can elevate so much of what you create. So I'd really highly recommend just taking a few hours and just messing around with that add-on. It's absolutely amazing. Anyway, thanks for checking in again. Like I mentioned in the intro, there's going to be more of these. Like I said, the next one is, I think, transitions. So make sure that you're subscribed if you want to, see that when it comes out. And until next time, take care.